Hey guys, I'm JanetOnOccasion, and today we're taking a look at some news. That's right, we're looking at news. I know I've missed the last month's worth of news, but I've made it for this one, so, you know, get over it. So, Total War Warhammer 3, addressing the chaos debate. So, I'm just going to put, I haven't read this yet, but I'm just going to put in my 2 cents for the whole chaos debate, as it's been dubbed by this blog post, and only this blog post. But a lot of people have been basically really unsure how chaos is being tackled when you've got all these new characters being introduced that are, you know, sort of monogod factions, but they don't fit into the sort of monogod, well, the monogods, right? Sort of faction picker for sort of the demons of chaos or whatever. And so where do they lie, right? Where are they? What are they? And I think a lot of people just seem to think that, I mean, I certainly think that variety is what makes Warhammer really good, but unfortunately, people seem to be missing the point of what variety actually is. Just having more stuff isn't a good thing. You want each campaign you play to be different, not just have more stuff in it. So if you just get everything that's under the umbrella of chaos and jam it all into every campaign for chaos, then that isn't variety. Every single one of those campaigns is going to be identical to the previous one, you know, except maybe a different starting location. So the idea of, you know, can you confederate the demons of chaos, guys, or like whatever. I mean, it's something that I wouldn't want anyway. I don't like confederation. I think if you're going to be collecting legendary lords, allies and vassalization and stuff like that is more interesting mechanic to push. So if you've got a more robust mechanic for allegiances, then that would be better. So you can actually take command of allied armies, right, at the cost of allegiance now. So there are tools being implemented that make it sort of easier to go, oh, but I kind of want all these people under my banner. I'm spreading my influence. I have all these vassals. I want it to be felt. And now there are more tools for that. So I think push those tools. Don't just go backwards and go, oh no, I want say, I don't know, Festus to be able to confederate Azazel because they're both under the Warriors of Chaos, you know, bracket, right? Which is technically true. But then when you've got Azazel in your you know, kingdom, your, you know, whatever, your faction, they're going to suck. They're going to be missing all the stuff that makes them Azazel, right? They're not going to have access to all the Slaneshi sort of branded faction mechanics that character would have, right? Because that's the thing with Total War Warhammer. Every single character has their own mechanics that come along with it, and, you know, their own sort of faction mechanics, or sub-faction mechanics. They all have their own unique things which make it feel unique. As soon as you confederate, say, I don't know, if you're playing as Krokgar and then you confederate Oxyotl, then you're not going to be able to do the really cool demon hunting teleporting around the place. So you just have this diluted, boring version of a campaign that'd be really good. And it's the same with all the chaos stuff. I wouldn't want every chaos campaign to have access to all the chaos stuff, because that actually makes it less varied, not more. So that's what I want to see, right? I don't want to see them leaning into confederations. I don't want to see this idea of like everyone has to be able to play in the same pool, especially because it's chaos. So I can see there's sort of arguments for the Everchosen, to be like, get everyone under his banner. But again, it's tenuous at best. The moment he falters, all of the people under him are just going to go, haha, now's the time to stab him in the back and rule ourselves, right? They're the Chaos Gods, you know, they're the minions of the Chaos Gods. They're all dicks. So, you know, the idea of there being rigid thing, no, they are part of your faction now. Unless we get like a civil war mechanic, it's just not tenable. So that's my thoughts on it. I think forcing all of them to be in the same arena just makes it less interesting. It makes them less unique. It makes every campaign the same, and it means that most of the game you may as well just shelve because you've done a chaos campaign, right? So what's the point of doing the rest? So there are some real problems there. But then I just hate confederation generally. I think it's a terrible mechanic, and I know a lot of people go, oh, it's good actually. You're wrong. Fight me. So let's see what CA have to say about it though, because I am intrigued to see what they want to say about it. But I wanted to make sure you guys knew where I stood first, so you know where my biases are. So, hello Total War Warhammer fans. Over the past few weeks, months and even years, there's been a healthy debate within the community as to how to approach the implementation of certain races in the Total War Warhammer games. Nowhere has it been more apparent than the split between the Warriors of Chaos, the Demons of Chaos, and monogod races of Tzeentch, Slaanesh, Khorne, and Nurgle. With that discussion rising to the forefront, following the reveal of the Champions of Chaos, we want to take a moment to sit down with our design team and get their thoughts on the process behind it. So today, we're here to provide you a clear picture of what, why, and how we've split the Lords of Chaos, as well as the role they're playing for the coming DLC. You ready for a super duper deep dive? Let's go. Oh no, it's not going to be super duper, is it? Oh, not prepared for that. It's bloody hot, by the way. I don't know if you guys noticed, it's bloody hot. You can't feel the heat from the screen, but you should be able to, okay? It should just be, like, resonating off me. I'm actually very pale. This orange glow is, it's nothing to do with the white balance of the camera. No, that's just because I'm just radiating heat. So, why are the 4 new legendary lords considered warriors of chaos? Because they're in that book. With this being the first, like, they're all mortal. Like, it's just, anyway, with this being the first warrior, I know a lot of people have genuine concerns about this stuff, but like I'm already bored of the discussion, so I'm pleased this blog post exists, and I know it has to appeal to everyone, but I'm just like, why is this an argument? Anyway, with this being the first Warriors of Chaos, blah 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 blah, we wanted to reintroduce this iconic race in a way that was befitting of their infamous world-ending reputation. To that end, introducing 4 legendary lords, each of whom is aligned with one of the 4 Chaos gods, was a flavourful way to start, particularly given that we already have 2 undivided lords in the form of Archaon and Kolek. Beyond the flavour of each champion, Beyond the flavour that each champion could bring to this Lord's pack, we found that several design elements aligned exceptionally well with the revamped Warriors of Chaos mechanics. For instance, the vision for Azazel was that he's been sent out into the world to find and lure promising undivided champions into devoting themselves to Slaanesh. He's basically an evil talent scout, a role implied as far back as Morkar the Uniter, who may have been persuaded along his path to become the first ever chosen way back in the days of Sigma. For some characters, it would have been very hard to find a niche for them in the Monogods roster. Festus is a good example here. He's a durable Law of Nurgle spellcaster who's a master of brewing plagues. But how do you make him interesting alongside Kugath, who's better at all the things in addition to throwing exploding Nurglings? The answer, put Festus in the Warriors of Chaos, and you've immediately got a combination of features that's entirely unique. Hooray! Finally, this approach allowed us to push the quality of the pack far higher than we could have otherwise. Having the whole team laser-focused on a shared feature set meant that every single playtest, improvement and bug fix benefited all the characters rather than one. It needs to be stressed, though, that even in this context, our goal was to create 4 Warriors of Chaos experiences that feel like Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, and Tzeentch, much in the same way that Wolfheart and the new Volkmar feel like Empire factions, even though they don't share the same mechanics as Karl Franz. These are true hybrids, drawing a ton of flavour and gameplay from their relevant Dark God. They'll be fully capable of running armies that will look very much like the ones you've seen playing the relevant God-specific race, but with Dragon Ogres. So that's fun. So immediately here, right, this is sort of the point that I was getting at with variety. So if you've got, like, you know, a Warrior of Chaos legendary lord that is Nurgle focused, they can just have all Nurgle stuff, and they can be varied, right? They don't need to have access to all of the Nurgle stuff, because they're the same as Kugath, right? But having all the Warriors of Chaos stuff that's variety. It's a different, unique, you know, tool set you have at your disposal. That's true variety. Variety isn't, oh, we'll give him everything, because more things means more varied. It doesn't. It just doesn't work out that way. You would just have to be running the same armies with, you know, in both campaigns, and that's boring, you know? That's really dull. So having these unique, you know, each character just having the stuff that makes them feel appropriate to that character rather than the stuff that makes it appropriate to that faction, that also makes sense to you guys? So, for instance, you know, he might have the Warriors of Chaos stuff, but he also leans towards the Nurgle stuff, so he has Nurgle mechanics rolled in, right? So we've already seen from Festus's campaign mechanics, he has access to the Cauldron, right? So he can make a bunch of fun diseases, but he's a Warriors of Chaos faction. So he's a Warriors of Chaos faction with a Nurgle mechanic. There's no reason why they can't just take the best, most appropriate mechanics from anywhere in the game and give it to the characters where it's most appropriate for them. They don't have to be a part of the Chaos Demons faction, you know, the Nurgle Chaos Demons faction, to have those mechanics. They can be chopped and chosen however you like. So this leads to much more variety and actually a much more true telling of that particular character's story. And I think that's way more important, because then you get to play multiple stories, right? And that's a good thing. So this, I think, is great. Otherwise, just the whole game would feel the same. It'd just be a homogenous mess of boring. So yeah, this is the excuse to play multiple campaigns, and that's more important. So where does this leave the mono-god races like Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle, and Tzeentch? It's important to state, the new DLC characters existing within the Warriors of Chaos races does not prevent us from adding mortal characters to the mono-god rosters, because they can literally go, this character should have access to this stuff, so it does. Like, it's that simple. You know, it's really easy. Just make every single character bespoke, and you'll have a better experience with literally anyone you play. So, this is something we confront on a DLC by DLC basis. In some instances, mortal characters might fit better alongside a demon-focused roster, or the monogod mechanics. In others, the roster might end up with wildly different bespoke feature sets, more appropriate to a given faction. Don't worry, there are plenty of exciting characters who will be joining the monogods in the future. See, there's more coming. It's also worth stressing that this pack will still massively transform the monogod playstyle. In some cases, their rosters are almost doubling in size, with each god gaining a new hero and 2 lords to create their armies, topped off by the ability to convert mortal lords into demon princes. Even older heroes are getting updated, with cultists now riding new war shrines into battle as mounts, combined with a ton of balance changes and the new immortal empires starting positions. We're pretty sure the monogods will offer a ton of fresh, new experiences. I added exciting because I'm excited. What can I say? Fresh, exciting new experiences. Why are there 2 Slaanesh Legendary Lords in the Warriors of Chaos? With hindsight, everything is much clearer. It's fair to say that Sigvald, if Sigvald hadn't already been in the game since 2016, he would have undoubtedly been the Slaanesh champion in Azazel's place. Beyond that, we wanted to ensure that all 4 of the Dark Gods had representation within this pack in order to provide you with a larger variety of legendary lords to play at launch. Plus, we really like the Swiss Army knife dynamism that Azazel brings to the roster. Ultimately, our aim has been to ensure that both Slaaneshi lords offer a distinct playstyle. As Azazel is a demon prince, he has a narrower choice of units to recruit from, solely focusing on Undivided and Slaaneshi units, while Sigvald has the potential to branch out into units from all 4 pantheons and Undivided. That's not to say you'll see Sigvald leading armies of screaming Khornate berserkers or festering Nurgle worshippers due to the Dark Authority system, see below. Sigvald's own personal retinue will maintain a distinctly Slaanesh flavour, and he'll need to do some delegation to others to efficiently maintain units devoted to other gods. So, even though there's only 1 lord in the Slaanesh race, you've got 3 very different ways to play Slaanesh-themed campaign. How do unit rosters work in a campaign? While the Warriors of Chaos can eventually access a truly vast array of mortal and demonic units, it's not just a case of constructing specific buildings and spewing out multicolored units. Much like the lore, you'll have to work hard to amass the forces of multiple gods, and certain characters will find it easier, or more difficult, than others. See, it's that bespoke thing, you know? Every unit in the roster is treated as either a warband unit or a gifted unit. Warband units are your bread and butter, consisting of mortal humans as well as the bulk of the Undivided monstrous units. Almost all of them can be marked, an act that devotes them to a specific god and turns them into a new unit with new visual stats and even new voice lines. It's fun, isn't it? Though you can't necessarily mark a unit right from the start. Gifted units are primarily demons, accompanied by a few specialist, non-demonic units, such as Hell Cannons and Shaggoths, that are recruited by spending souls on Chaos gifts, hence the name, or via certain special events. The catch? There's a cap on the number of these gifted units you can have in any given army. That is, unless you're Bellicor, who can recruit as many as he likes. Again, more uniqueness, right, is a way that the character becomes more unique, which I really like. So, like marks, these options aren't necessarily available from the very start of your campaign. In fact, the specific conditions for unlocking these options is one of the key ways we're differentiating the individual factions. For example, Bellicor... Hang on, sorry, I've got an eyelash or something tickling at me. There we go. So Bellicor can recruit a whole bunch of gifted units from turn 1 onward, but must unlock the ability to mark mortals in his skill tree. Which is interesting, because I guess the Chaos Gods wouldn't necessarily give him the ability to bestow power upon mortals that way, perhaps. Because, you know, they think he's a jerk. So Archaon can unlock the ability Sigvold can recruit Slanesh mortals and demons from turn 1 onward, but must wait to unlock the other gods' forces, though he might struggle to keep Khornate units in check. Because, you know, Khorn and Slanesh don't get on. Archaon can unlock the ability to recruit god-specific units, and is best suited to access and lead forces that mix and match with a bit of everything. Kolek will have the hardest time getting access to god-specific units, but has easier access to Dragon Ogres and Dragon Ogre Shaggoths, which is pretty cool. You know, it all makes sense. On top of these special conditions, a Dark Authority system restricts which units you can include in any given army. God-specific units won't simply follow anyone. For example, if you want Nurgle followers or demons in your army, you'll need a Nurgle lord or hero in the army to keep them in line. Otherwise, they'll suffer from increased upkeep and reduced replenishment. So it's a fun idea that you have to have, you know, a champion of some description leading that force. It's almost like with... I don't know how Warhammer... I say Warhammer Fantasy, that's died, but, you know, like Age of Sigmar, I don't think works with their sort of varied rosters. But with 40k, if you've got a bunch of different detachments, they all need to have their own HQ units to kind of, you know, lead them. So the idea of having these very disparate armies, where you have, like, you know, something like Genestealer cults, for instance, you know, you can have some Imperial Guard as a detachment, but they have to have their own HQ, right? So the idea of having these sort of different forces leading them, I kind of like how that's represented here. I think it makes a lot of sense to be able to do that in Total War, and it's a nice way to sort of limit you a bit. Like, characters have to drive it, and that gives, well, it gives them more character, doesn't it? So I like it. So let's see here. Otherwise, they'll suffer from increased upkeep and reduced replenishment, and if you try to put Khorn units in an army with Slanesh characters, or God forbid, a wizard, you'll need to make sure there's a proper Khornate character present to balance things out. We really want to sell the idea that these warbands are perilous coalitions of rivals, forcing you, the player, to think carefully about how your armies, I guess, build armies. I'm going to say how you build your armies. But anyway, this is really fun. I really like this system. I think it's a nice one for sort of keeping things thematic. It's good, but also it gives you some flexibility because you can just sort of bend the rules a bit, so that's good. So what's special about the new DLC Lords? Comparatively, the 4 new DLC Lords are almost akin to a sub-race within the Warriors, Lords who are more closely aligned to their specific god and thus limited in their access to the full suite of march units in lieu of their patron god's specific units alongside the Undivided. To accommodate this sacrifice, they instead gain a variety of specialist advantages. They can start marking mortals and recruiting demons from turn 1, and will find it both easier and cheaper to do so. They share a uniquely structured tech tree, about half of which is built for their particular faction, that allows for more specialization in god-specific units and mechanics. They spread and benefit more from their own god's corruption. I've lost where I am again. I'm just sort of quietly melting over here, but are actively penalized by corruption of an opposing god. They get access to their god's battle mechanics and army abilities, and they each get visions of certain campaign versions of certain campaign features belonging to the main demon faction. For example, Festus can brew and spread plagues, but they have slightly different effects to Kugaths. So I mean, this is great. It means the characters are bespoke, you know, they're their own thing, which is fantastic. Much better than just put them all in a big blob, you know. So there's a ton of other variations we've made where appropriate. For example, vassals belonging to the DLC Lords will take on certain attributes from their masters, spreading their favoured corruption and gaining thematic bonuses in battle. That's really cool. I really like that, because you're collecting minions. You know, it'll feel that way. They've even got unique ways to keep their troops in line. Festus, as an example, can get more Nurgle authority by bestowing his armies with plagues, making it easier for him to put Nurgle troops in Undivided-led forces, which is a really interesting concept. So a lot of fun things to balance. A lot of management stuff there. I can often find a lot of the management stuff can be a bit annoying in Total War. Harmony, for instance, for Cathay, I found really tedious very quickly because there was no leeway. You know, there's actually a mod that does exactly what I had been suggesting, which makes it so it's got some wiggle room either side. So, you know, if harmony is like -1 or +1, you know, one side or the other, it's still fine. It's still considered balanced. So it gives you a bracket to meet, and that's something I'd like to see, because sometimes management is good, but only when it sort of encourages you to sort of role play and things, when it's just like tedious, like just having to sit and do sums and sort of add up everything you've got going. That's really boring. So hopefully this is quite simple. It's just, I want to have, you know, this sort of unit, so I'll have the same flavor dude in the army to lead those guys, right? It's intuitive. So it won't feel like management, it'll just feel like, oh, crafting an army. And that, I think, is good. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. But yeah, it's looking promising. So, all in all, we've tried to make these 4 champions feel very different for the rest of the Warriors of Chaos. Our dialogue engineers have even gone so far as to ensure that units in these characters' armies use different voice lines when led by one of the characters. You'll hear Marauders and Warriors and Chosen, Marauders and Warriors and Chosen, Azazel's army, shouting about their allegiance, not just to Slanesh, but to Azazel himself. Now that is really nice. That's really thematic and really, oh, that's lovely. I love that. That's world building, you know. That's really nice. So on top of all that, they also participate in a brand new campaign set on the Realm of Chaos map, which offers a dramatic narrative following the main game's Urson storyline. It's a nifty alternate take on the Rift's system, one with more control in the lead up to a truly epic finale. Lovely. What about Confederation? Disable it completely, game-wide, okay? I'm so sick of it. Especially like, even ways that it's actually quite crunchy, quite fluffy rather. You got stuff like greenskins, you know, they defeat a faction leader, you get to confederate. I think that's boring. Make them be a vassal if you defeat them. The idea that they would follow you forever as like the same faction is dumb. I hate it. I find it really frustrating because it just skips a bunch of the game. The game is about conquering, and if you just go, okay, do you want to just be in my faction? I'll just double the size of my empire at the click of a button. Ugh, hate it. Can't stand it. It's rubbish. Also, when the AI do it, it's 100% frustrating because it's, haha, I finally got Thorgrim down to his last settlement. Oh, he just confederated with Ungrim, and now I have to fight him for another 50 turns. Fun, you know. Hate it. Bad mechanic. I'm glad like allies and vassals have like more stuff going on in Warhammer 3, and I hope they keep expanding on that because that is infinitely more interesting to me. So, initially the team were aiming for Archaon, at a minimum, to be able to confederate all the Warriors of Chaos. However, there were some significant technical and balance issues that we were unable to resolve in the time we had to implement the rest of the feature overhauls. Given the technical issues, we were concerned that launching with Confederation enabled would jeopardize the core experience of the Warriors of Chaos. As such, we chose to disable the option for the initial release of Mortal Empires, and please forever. With that said, we know that it is important to you, and we'll be looking to enable some form of confederation for warriors in a post-release patch. We'll talk more about it, how we'll aim to accomplish that in the near future. I hope they don't. I hope they go, oh, actually, we changed our mind. It would make the game worse, so we're not doing it. We allowed modders to do it. That'll do. Just seriously, if they just went, oh, we've allowed modders to do that, I think it'd be fantastic. So, because the thing is, it makes more sense to mod it in than out, because if you have it just as like a main thing in the game, you can just not confederate people, but it means the AI would confederate with everybody, and that'd be really annoying, because it'd just be a homogenous blob, missing a bunch of the unique features of each lord, you know, as they got folded into a different lord. So anyway, allies would be way more interesting. Because the thing, like allegiances and stuff, it's actually more difficult. It's something that a lot of people seem to forget. If you have say 2 settlements owned by 2 different factions, they will have like 1.5 stacks each to fight you with. If it's 2 settlements owned by 1 faction, that's like 1.5 stacks. It's the same, right? So by having an alliance of 2 settlements rather than a single faction of 2 settlements, you're actually fighting twice the stuff. And so alliances are like a way more interesting way to have people declare war on you and try and mess you up. Just combined arms. Also, it means they're coming at you less regularly. You know, they're coming at you sort of staggered with like unusual timings and often from multiple directions. So actually it makes it way less predictable fighting them, and you get attacked from different angles, and it's actually much more difficult just generally. Whereas if you have one big empire, even if it is in 2 different places, you know that faction's just going to keep recruiting from the exact same, you know, location and keep sending armies at you like clockwork, you know? So no, Confederation actually makes the game easier when the AI do it, and that's something that a lot of people just seem to completely forget. Every time they can confederate someone, they should ally with them instead. It would be way harder. So, yeah, way more interesting, way more unique. And you could take out, you know, a clump and that would actually make a dent in their, you know, in how they operate, rather than just like a tiny, like, oh, they'll have a quarter fewer, you know, men in a single stack now when they come. Nah, boring, stupid. So, no. Allies and vassals. They've made it much better in Warhammer 3. I hope they continue to do that instead of devolving to the, you know, sort of just deferring to the same old rubbish that made Mortal Empire's campaigns really tedious in Warhammer 2, honestly. Because there was always a point in a campaign, which I'm sure you all recognise, where it would be the sort of snowballing bit, but you'd have a big empire, and then you'd be fighting a big empire that is sort of confederated a bunch and just turned into this massive blob. And then you'd end up fighting that for, like, most of your campaign would just be fighting one faction, you know? And it would just be so boring. It would kill all variety. So, you know. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I have faith. I have faith in them to make clever decisions rather than just sort of decisions that appease the mob. Because, you know, the mob's not always right. The mob's not always right. Sometimes they just go, no, I'm used to this mechanic, and why has this been taken from me? I think that's the thing. I think if you take something away from people, they're more likely to get really annoyed about it than if you offer to give them something different, right? Because people like what they're used to. So I think removing something is always going to leave a sour taste in people's mouth. But no, I love how they're doing it. I think this is really good. You know, I think it's fun. So comment, like, subscribe, and